Moving to the next question. This comes from Germany. It's from Mrs. Qamar Sahi Saiba. Jazakallah for your question. And she's actually referring to Islamic law. And she writes, she extends a very warm assalamu alaikum to the whole panel, and says, according to Islamic law, a widow has to remain in her house about 4 months after the passing of her husband. My question is, if a woman is living in a European country and she's also working in employment and is not allowed to go out for 4 months, what can she or what should she do? Dr. Zaid Saab.
This refers to the waiting period. Once the husband of a woman dies, she should have a waiting period which is 4 months and 10 days. And Allah in Surah Al-Baqarah mentions this waiting period. He says, and of those of you who die and leave wives behind, these, meaning wives, shall wait concerning themselves 4 months and 10 days. So this is the instruction regarding the waiting period for their future. And the wisdom of Allah behind this period that has been stipulated is that if the woman is carrying a child of the deceased husband, then this becomes evident, so that there is no argument about it as to who was the husband.
And it's protecting the lady.
It's protecting the rights of the lady and the sentiments of the lady. Now, of course, in this waiting period, she should, of course, abstain from freely mixing with the society in general. But Islam is such a beautiful religion that it gives options, that if there are duties that she has to perform in her day-to-day life, then she, of course, is permitted in those circumstances to be able to carry those out rather than being imprisoned in her house. And as we see here in the Western world, if women are part of the breadwinners or are the main breadwinners sometimes, then they may have to carry on that pursuit of their life so that they can exist. And Islam obviously does not stand in the way of that. But at the same time, here in the West, many employers are very understanding in many respects as well. And often, if they are approached on this subject, then they are quite flexible on these arrangements, and they may even allow the woman to take time off work so that she doesn't have to go out of the house for that particular duty, and so she does not have to put herself into that situation. So Islam gives her that option, that if the duties are something that she cannot exist without, then taking that into consideration and making sure that she does just that, rather than continue her life freely as if she would normally would, then she should only do those things which are of emergent need to her.
Because, I mean, as you said, well, everywhere in the globe there's the dependency issue. It may well be there's no other family, and that even if she wasn't the breadwinner, she may well, because of circumstances, her husband passing away, have to assume that mantle. Children to feed, a household to run. And then Islam, as you say, is a very practical religion, so pragmatic steps surely come into play very much at that time.
Necessities of life, I mean, yes, absolutely. I mean, she has to exist. And if that is her duty and role at that time, that takes precedence over something else, over that matter.
I mean, this sort of concept is sometimes within the Islamic world applied. Again, we've talked in earlier programs about how the practice so differs from the beautiful teaching. I mean, this question, I am sure, emanates because we see such what some who are non-Muslim background see as very sort of terms which they will describe it as backward, or living in, you know, the approach which is sometimes adopted, which is far away from the actual principle of what Islam teaches.
Yes, yes. You know, looking at these laws, you understand why the Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, in the latter days, the Muslims will resemble the Jewish community. It's not so much that we'll look like the Jews, but we will act in the same rigidity of law that they acted with. You know, for instance, you understand the kosher diet laws, which become so encumbersome upon a woman in her home that she has to prepare meals a certain way according to this law, where all of the meat dishes are here, the milk-based dishes are here, and these dishes can never come together because it's so strict that her life becomes, and I've spoken with some Jewish women about this, that her life becomes so difficult because of the law, the way it's interpreted, with this very strict and rigid type of understanding. The same is with the Quran now, with the way Muslims have interpreted these verses, saying a woman for 4 months, and they may go there and count the days, and some of them are so obsessed with these things, you know, that okay, on this day you started, on this day you don't dare leave your home. If so, you've broken the law, you know, you're a sinner in the sight of God, this and that, and has made the life for this poor woman unbearable. As he said, imagine, the law is based on very sound wisdom. A woman may be pregnant and you want to determine the parentage. The woman is also susceptible at that time, isn't she? I mean, she just lost her husband, the person she's loved, she's been with all her life. Her emotions are very raw, as we say, and she is in a very weak position in terms of those emotions. She can be, you know, vulnerable. Yes, exactly. And so Islam wants to protect these things, but if necessary, as he said, you know, give her the right to continue to live her life, as opposed to be at the mercy of others who provide. So I am appalled, as anyone would be, when we see the actions of Muslims and the policies they adopt in certain Muslim countries based on their interpretation of the Quran, which is absolutely too strict and rigid in terms of how it should be applied based on what the real spirit of this law is.
Jazakallah, gentlemen, and I hope in answering we've provided the answer to Mrs. Sahi as well, but if there are issues you have or questions you have raised from the answers you've heard, please do email or indeed fax in.